Hi, I'm James Gardner, host of Your History, Your Story, a podcast for anyone who loves hearing fascinating tales about remarkable people, intriguing topics, and significant historical events. Our hope is to inspire you to uncover and share your history and your story. In this special episode of Your History, Your Story, we're doing a quick check-in with former guest Roger Hall, who joined us back in 2023 for an episode titled Making American Music Come Alive Again. Roger has spent a lifetime celebrating the richness of American music, and today he's here to share something new, his latest ebook, Free as the Breeze, A Songwriter's Joys and Sorrows. In this deeply personal work, Roger reflects on how music and the people and stories behind it brought him joy, meaning, and fulfillment throughout his life, even in the midst of family struggles and moments of sadness. We're excited to catch up with Roger and hear how his passion for music continues to inspire him and others. I'd now like to welcome Roger Hall back to our show. Welcome, Roger.
Hello, James. It's good to be back.
Well, it's really good to speak with you on our podcast. We've met so many wonderful guests and we've had a good time with so many people. And we hate to lose touch with people because we get into these conversations and we learn about each other and all the cool stuff that, for instance, like you're involved in. And we want to revisit you and see how things are going and see if you're working on any other project and anything that's come up since that we could chat about. So welcome. I understand. Well, first of all, we spoke back in 2023. The episode was called Making American Music Come Alive Again. And we interviewed you and you spoke about your love of music, your love of writing music, singing, playing music, and most importantly, preserving music, which I think is fantastic because that's not a selfish motive. You want to get the music out there so people can access it, and particularly music that is hard to access. I think that's the main thing. And your website is americanmusicpreservation.com. And I just want to talk to you, Roger, you've put down on paper, you've actually written an ebook that's called Free as a Breeze. And it's kind of your life story and your relationship to music in your life. Can you tell us about that project you've been working on?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Actually, that's one of my early songs, not the first song, but one of the early ones I wrote in the 60s. And I used that as the title because that was one of the songs I enjoyed writing the most. Writing songs can be very difficult. You can't force it. It has to just come on, and you have to have some ideas. And I can just tell you quickly the story, how I wrote that song. I was walking in New York City. I used to go to New York City on weekends from New Jersey and just walk around and just look at the sights. And I just fascinated to see the people and all the activities that were going on. And while I was walking around, this was late at night, I started thinking about a song. And I thought a song with a jazz waltz feel to it would be appealing. So I started coming up with the words and I started singing the song to myself. At that time, I couldn't write music. A lot of songwriters, even today, actually don't write the music. They sing it and somebody else writes it down. And that's what I had to do. I had the words, I wrote the words down, but I didn't have the music written down. So I had to go to somebody. Turned out it was a man who worked on Broadway musicals, a very professional man. And I sang it to him and he wrote it down and produced what they call a lead sheet, which is just the words and the chord symbols so that musicians could play it. So I had the sheet music. And then I went to a recording studio in Bloomfield, New Jersey, actually on Broad Street. It's no longer there, but I was just amazed that they had a recording studio at that time. And I was able to, of course, I had to pay for them to make what they call a demo record, a demonstration record, which you would bring to a record company and hopefully they would produce it. So I went there and I got the recording made at the studio. And then I tried, of course, going to New York and going to the different record companies. And of course, it's very difficult, even today. I'm sure it's difficult to get your song produced. But it was just that struggle that I went through with that particular song. And then, of course, later with other songs, including my efforts, as you mentioned, for preservation of early American music, particular music that people, I think, would have a lot of respect for if they knew more about it. And I try to give people background in this book. It's about my life, so it covers about 50 years from the 60s through about 1990. And what I did in preservation was later in my life. Started out with the songwriting in the 60s mainly, but then I got into the music preservation. And part of the preservation is what I have written to help preserve the music. I can give you one example of a song I wrote back in 1981. It was based on a poem written by a 10-year-old girl during the War of 1812.
Really?
That goes back. And she titled it Peace. And it's about having peace. It's a actually anti-war song, but she was 10 years old and she wrote this song. It's only two verses, but I was so taken by the poem that I said, I have to put this to music. So I did that, and it was performed by a chorus, and it was quite well received too at that time. But that's an example of taking something from the past and bringing it into the present. You have the poem, but when then you put the music to it, that adds another element. And that's sort of what I've been trying to do with the music I do.
That's interesting, Roger. And I'm thinking about your story, writing your life story is sort of bringing your past into the present by telling your story and then including the different types of music that appealed to you and interested you during your journey in your life. And you had so much going on. And anybody who will read your story will find out you had a lot of challenges in your life. I know you mentioned that you went through a family split that went on that was very difficult, but how did music help you through difficult times in your early life?
Well, and mainly it was through the listening to music. I sort of zeroed in on listening to music, mainly on the radio in those days. This is in the 1950s. And I was very young. I was only 10 years old when the family had the breakup. So it was and it was a very sudden thing. I didn't know it was coming. So it was very traumatic. And so what I would do is listen to the radio at night, usually after I did my homework. And I would listen to, at that time, the 50s, rock and roll was coming into popularity. And there was a famous disc jockey in New York, Alan Freed, who had a radio show, which I used to listen to. And I just sort of become absorbed with the certain songs, particularly the slower songs. They appeal to me more because of my emotional trauma. And so I spent a lot of time listening to the music and really getting into the music. And I think that sort of helped me in a way. It was kind of therapeutic, just by listening to the music and feeling, I felt sad, of course, but I also felt at times happier with some of the songs that I listened to. So it was a combination of things that carried me through those difficult times, especially in the 1950s.
Right. And in the Free as a Breeze, the journey that you take the reader on, you talk about things that really were of big interest to mostly boys in the 50s and late 40s and 50s, cowboys and westerns, and you talk about people like Hopalong Cassidy and Roy Rogers and Dale Evans, and then the music associated with those. You really take everybody on a journey. You talk about a lot of movies that you saw for the first time and the music that you listened to. And I remember one of the things, I think one of the first movies that you went to see was The Day the Earth Stood Still. And what's interesting about that is that just a few months ago, we interviewed Billy Gray, who was one of the stars of that movie back in, I think it was 51, that movie was from.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, yeah. But I love the way you have a fantastic memory. And I think you really bring to life an era that, so many of, the younger people today wouldn't know about. So thank you for doing that. And But you always, no matter what you're going through in your life and your story, you interject this music, and you have so much information at your fingertips. Was this whole process very therapeutic for you, Roger?
Yes, definitely. I'm glad you mentioned that particular movie because that really was a key movie that I saw actually in Washington, D.C., where the movie takes place. I was with my mother on a summer vacation, and that was right after the divorce breakup. So I was very traumatized. I think she sensed that and took me to see this movie. I don't think she cared for the movie herself, but she knew I would enjoy it. And I really did enjoy it because it took place there. And there was a young boy, Billy Gray, as you mentioned, who was in the movie. Another thing that was important to me, I didn't realize at the time, was the music. The music score was by a famous composer, Bernard Herrmann, a man who I've studied over the years and helped to bring him out to more people by writing about him. Actually, I'm working on a book now on film composers called Hooray for Hollywood, which will be about composers like him. And I, of course, will mention that particular movie because it was so important in my childhood when I saw that in Washington and always remembered it and always enjoyed even rewatching it because it just brought back a lot of the memories of that time. Today, I can look at it and not be so pained about it. But back then, of course, it was painful still for me to do anything. I was really quite almost in trauma, and I was really very withdrawn, I would say, at that time. So going to a movie like that, and other movies that I saw in my hometown at the Royal Theater, a wonderful theater I used to enjoy going to, I remember, and that's also was therapeutic in a way because especially the music in the movies appealed to me a lot at that particular time. And later, I became a film music critic and have written about film music for many years now. But it started with my childhood going to the movies and paying attention to the music, not just the story, and enjoying the music as well as the story.
Your book talks a lot about some different artists that you were following and interested in. And I could tell that once you started talking about that person or that music, you were just showing such a deep interest in analyzing it and the different songs and all the different ideas that were going through your head. And you being a creative person yourself, but also you were absorbing other people's creativity and sort of analyzing it. As you said, you're a critic, so you knew how to sort of unpack different types of music and study it. So so interesting. So really, as far as you're free as a breeze, it just seems like something that is good medicine for somebody who just loves history, loves music history, and if you're a local person to Bloomfield, New Jersey, it's fantastic because there's a lot of gems in there that I love. But certainly, it's an era. I think most people who grew up in that era, the 40s, 50s, and early 60s, can get a lot out of it. What would you hope are the main things that someone would come away with after reading your story?
Well, it's hard to say because people have different interests, even with music and different tastes in music. And so I can't say that, the music would be something that everybody would identify with, but it's mainly the story of how music can be beneficial. I've actually taught classes for senior citizens where I play music and ask them to respond emotionally, not intellectually, but emotionally. How does it make you feel? And I feel very strongly that music is a very powerful force for emotions, both sad and happy emotions. But it's a very powerful device that people can use, hopefully beneficial, not destructive. And that's what I've tried to do. It's easy to get into, depression and be very upset about things. But I think if you listen to music and try to pick music that you enjoy, which is what I've always tried to do, don't listen to music you don't like just because somebody say it's good. I've said that to many of the senior citizens who felt they enjoyed certain music and people criticized them and they were upset about it. And I said, don't ever be upset about it. You should listen to what you enjoy, what makes you feel good, because that's what I did. And that's what kept me going is listening to music that I enjoy and hopefully, lift me up when I'm in the down periods of my life. And that's really what I have done that's carried me through is I often listen to music when I'm in those dark moments, feeling really sad.
A lot of people can learn from this. That sometimes writing things down, writing your experiences down might be helpful to, both good things and bad things. But I think just writing about our past sometimes is a lot of fun. We started a blog, and I started with a story about my grandmother and what I remembered about her. So, songs are also stories and memories. Songs can bring back memories. I think in our first interview that we did, I talked about how a certain song can bring me back to high school or junior high or college or when my wife and I were first married. It could just sort of transport you. And it's got a lot of power. And, just writing things down, whether you're writing a song or a poem or memories or things like that, and put them out there because there's also people in the family, I think, who will enjoy reading these things or singing these songs or listening to poems and things like that. So there's so much creativity in you, Roger. You're still creating, and music doesn't have an expiration date, does it?
No, it certainly doesn't. And it does live on, particularly because we have all the recordings. That's the main thing. When I was very young, it was hard to get, other than going to a store and buying a record. In those days, they were 45 records mainly, and later LPs. And that's really another way that I saved the music. If I couldn't listen to it on radio, I would buy the record. And this is another thing. This was the beginning, really, of the recording becoming popular in the 50s, especially when young people were buying records and then they would play the record. They wouldn't have to listen to the radio to hear it. They could play it any time. And that's the thing that also I've enjoyed. I have obviously a large record collection that I've collected a lot of the music and try to preserve it by letting other people know about it, and not just my own music. Unfortunately, I don't have that many recordings of my own music. I've written over 100 pieces of music, but I have a few CDs that are available. And I can mention one particular song that I wrote back in the 60s, which is available on YouTube. It's called the Soho Serenade, which was also recorded in Bloomfield, by the way, at that recording studio. That people can listen to that online if they care to. But Free as a Breeze, I'm offering that as a bonus. If people order the book, I will send them an audio of that particular song, which is not available anywhere else. So they will get the actual song itself, which was recorded back in 1965.
Well, we have your website here again, AmericanMusicPreservation.com. And can people find more about your book on the website?
Yes, they can. Yes, there's a description. They can order directly on that page for Free as the Breeze, and they will receive it. Actually, it's through email, and so I'm using that because I figure that's the best way to reach people directly, and you don't have to worry about postage, mailings, and all of that. And they will get the entire book that they can read online on any device. It's a PDF or an ebook, and so people can read it on any device that they have. So I think it's an easy way to get the book and be able to read it.
Yes, it's your journey, it's your personal journey, and you had a lot of adventures, a military academy, and you were in the army, I think, for 3 years. You were stationed in Germany. It talks about that, even some of your first loves. So it's a little PG-13, Roger.
Yes, yes, it is. I don't get into too much detail about those stories, but
Just a teaser, shall we say?
that's right. Well, when I was in the army, it was kind of a wilder time.
We'll save that for another book.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, I encourage our listeners to check out your website because there's so much other stuff on it as well. And thank you very much for coming back and speaking with us again. We like to revisit with some of our guests and have them back to let us know what they're doing. And Roger, keep doing what you're doing because this is priceless and it's saving music and music history for future generations.
Well, thank you. Can I just mention one other thing?
Sure.
Actually, there is a page on the website called Memories and Music, and that lists all the books that I've written about my music career. This is actually the ninth or 10th book I've written over about 10 years, 20 years. And people can see the other books I've written, including about the Western, you mentioned Hopalong Cassidy. I wrote a book about that and some of the other things. And I'm now working on one about Elvis Presley, believe it or not, and a man I worked for in Cleveland who was a disc jockey. And so I'm going to be writing again about the 1950s, in the beginnings of Elvis Presley, before people were aware of him. So that's one of the books I'm working on. So I'm still writing. In other words, I'm trying to preserve whatever music I can work on.
Terrific. Well, it's always very uplifting to speak with you, Roger, and just keep doing what you're doing. So thanks for being a guest on our show again, Roger.
Well, thank you, James. I appreciate it. And I hope people will enjoy reading the book.
Absolutely. And please give my very best to your lovely wife, Gail.
Thank you very much. The same to you and your lovely wife.
Okay. All right, Roger, you take care. Good talking to you.
The same here, James.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Your History, Your Story. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Facebook, X, and Instagram to stay connected. We'd love to hear from you, whether you have questions, comments, or a story to share. Until next time, be well and God bless.